So in this project, we were tasked to study the behavior of a drone when it was implemented to deliver pizzas to different households. When the drones were first implemented, there's plenty of problems that happened with customers complaining about the pizzas being shifted in different directions and pretty much just no good customer satisfaction at first. So we took this into account and we developed a model of the drone, how it was at first, that would show how the drone operated and the system that was developed around for it. So to do this, we first made a block diagram of the open loop system, which is how the drone was initially when there was lots of complaints, and you can see that right here. So from the picture on the screen, you can see that there is an input of f of r, a disturbance input of f of g, and this outputs to our transfer function. So we know from this that there's no feedback loop at first, there's no control to any outputs. So we knew that we'd have to develop a closed loop feedback system to have a good operating drone pretty much. So we first took into account our initial block diagram and developed a transfer function from this, which was g of s equals f of r minus m times g, which is mass times gravity, over ms squared plus bs plus 1 plus f of r minus m times g. So with this open loop transfer function, you can do a Ruth array, and it shows that since there's no sign changes, it shows that it is stable. But this isn't good enough. We knew that we needed to develop a closed loop system to have good effects on the drone flight. So we knew that there would be a couple things that would affect the flight of the drone, such as wind shear or any other factors like that could affect the flight, something falling on it, a leaf or something hitting the drone. So we knew that this would all have to be taken into account in our closed loop transfer function, which will be shown later.
So we know that we want to develop a controller for our system, but we wanted to include some requirements of our controller just to ensure that the drone has a safe path for delivering the pizza. Such requirements were rise time. We want a rise time of less than 10 seconds up to its desired height there, just so it doesn't take too long or possibly hit anything while it's rising. We don't want an overshoot larger than 5%. We came to that number because we thought 10% would be a little too much. Too much air, it might bump into something else, or we might be exhausting, excess power by going so far above. But maybe a requirement of like 3 to 2% might be too tight and hard to achieve. So we came to an overshoot of 5%. We also want our system to be bibostable. So we will do a steady state error analysis using Ruth arrays of our system. And these requirements led us to the following block diagram and the following transfer function of our closed loop system. And we're going to analyze this to make sure that it fulfills our requirements here. The key difference here from the open loop system is that this presence of the controller K, as you can see there. The controller K, we found using the Ruth array that it only allows our system to be bibostable if it follows this following inequality. So it's really important that we test this K to make sure that the stability isn't hindered. And the achievement of these design criteria are tested later.
So for our verification and iteration section, as you can see by our simulating graph, our drone stabilizes. The rise time for the simulation is around 9 seconds. Our time was better than our expected rise time of 10 seconds and met our criteria. In this time, our drone will rise to the height of around 25 meters. At this height, it stabilizes and carries out the orders as programmed. We used a Routh array for our closed-loop system to determine that it was BEBO stable. The graph converges in the end for the simulated system, which confirms our calculations and stability. Our original overshoot expectations were about 5%, though the final system produced much less overshoot at about 1%.
To analyze the robustness of our controller, we produced a Bode plot to see the gain and phase margins in MATLAB. The TF, Bode, and margin functions can be used to create a transfer function, create a Bode diagram, and receive the gain and phase margins and the rads per second that they happen, the frequency that they happen at. The gain margin we saw after doing this is infinite, meaning that the controller gain can be increased without making the system unstable. But the phase, however, is very small at about 5 degrees, meaning that we are very limited in controlling that and staying within the right frequency. We can increase, the increase allowed in controller gain is a factor of 1.246. So even with the small phase margin, we have a reasonable amount of control that we can change as to not restrict our controller. So while the phase margin is lower than we would normally like to see, it's made up for in the gain.
So in conclusion, we have developed a controller for our drone that has fulfilled all our design requirements that have enabled the drone to safely deliver the pieces to the customers without having a mishap. And this can be done with a relatively flexible gain and phase values. So that was awesome.